What is clearly a scam, but Americans have been conditioned to believe that it is normal. Your cell phone plans. In my country I pay €20 for unlimited calls, SMS and data. I work in phone sales. Whenever I speak to an American, they cannot believe how cheap our plans are compared to what they pay. Unpaid internships. It is literally wage theft. Rent to own products. Rent a center. Errands. Cons. Etc. You end up paying triple or quadruple the value of the product for virtually no other benefit than you'd get if you just saved a little money and bought the product outright. College textbooks. You pay $400 for a book because you have to have the newest version that's rarely changed much. And the school might offer you $40 and sell it for $150 used. When a website offers you a free trial, but it still wants your credit card info. Paying thousands of dollars for basic dental work. Overdraft protection, which actually allows the bank to charge you when you use a debit card, instead of just declining the transaction. College tuition. Being in debt for thousands of dollars as a young adult just starting their life. The two-party system. Megachurches. For-profit health insurance. We still pay for other people's health care. We just do it in a much more bloated and expensive way than universal health care. MLM. Health insurance. Studied abroad in France for a year. When I went to the hospital for urinary retention due to an infection and had to spend the night, the only thing I had to pay for was the antibiotics they gave me to take home for a week, which was about $10 for 7 pills. Ours is a joke. Working 50+ hours a week to barely make ends meet. No health care. And no future, but you're free, so it's worth it. Property tax. And forfeiture laws. As an American, you don't own anything. Did you know that? You don't own your house, even if you pay off the mortgage. Because every year you have to pay rent in the form of taxes to the government. If you think you actually own your house, stop paying property tax. Watch what happens. You will eventually be evicted from your totally paid off house. You are renting. We all are. We do not privately own property, the government owns it all. And forfeiture laws. Anything you have, the police can simply point a finger at it and decide it's not yours and /poof/. It isn't yours anymore. Your car. Your computer. The pair of pants you're wearing. Anything you have. You have simply because the government doesn't want it at the moment. But they absolutely can take it. For any reason or for no reason at all. Anytime they wish. It's odd to me that Americans are so terrified by communism. It's what we pretty much have. Functionally. We just changed the labeling. The price for healthcare in America. For the love of God, just travel overseas and compare. Like. To any country in the world. And then realize how big of a rip-off it is in America. And it's all insurance companies' fault. Fast fashion. Yes, you must get a completely new wardrobe every year or you won't fit in last year's style. Is /s. I can't believe how much money people drop on fashion clothing that they only wear a few times. I can get behind spending a lot on durable stock clothing that can be worn with anything and will last for years. And yes, wedding dresses included. Why spend over $100 on a dress that will only be worn one time? There are so many. I think the CPI, Consumer Price Index, is the biggest scam in US history. They use CPI to calculate the inflation rate, and they use it to calculate everything from Social Security payments, payments to government workers, military benefits, food stamps, tax brackets. Back in the 70s, there was out-of-control inflation, around 10%. In the 80s, they started messing around with the way that calculated the CPI. They used to use a metric called cost of good, and that changed it to the cost of living. Seems minor on the surface, but here's how it works. For example, take a tube of Crest toothpaste. Let's say in 1979 it cost $2 and in 1980 it cost $2.20. They would have said it inflated 10%. Now, here is how they would calculate it today. They would say yes. It's true that Crest went up 10%, but you could still buy some shitty generic toothpaste for $2. Therefore there has been 0% inflation. I mean WTF? These days the government is saying inflation is low, around 2%, but if you calculate the CPI the same way as they did in 1980, our inflation rate would be somewhere around 10%. What a scam. You don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that the government is lying to us about inflation, and the economy in so many ways. Just think about it, say 2 years ago. On the same day as it is right now, December 29th. You went to the grocery store and filled a cart with $100 worth of stuff. Now if today, 2 years later, you went to the same store and filled your cart with the same stuff, how much would it cost? Do you think it would be $104? Or do you think it would be more? $104 would be the right number if you believe the 2% inflation number that the government likes to feed us, but we all know it's going to cost way more than $104. What a scam. P.S. Sorry, I'm ranting now. The Federal Reserve, now there is another scam. Voting Republican or Democrat. The two-party political system has done a great job of making people think they have no other choices. Weight loss pills, wedding rings and ceremonies, and that whole deal. We can literally trace the need for an expensive ring to a commercial by De Beers, but talk about how it's silly to buy someone a diamond engagement ring and you're met by people saying wait till you get married lol. Tipping restaurant servers so the owners of the restaurant don't have to pay them a living wage. Bipartisanship. Diamonds in jewelry is a massive scam. Actual diamonds are pretty cheap to produce industrially and can look as good as diamonds mined in Africa. But people spend thousands on them as a way of showing their future wives that they can afford it. It's a literal waste of money. Edit. Technically its value is in demonstrating to a woman that a man is financially secure enough to marry, since a poor man can't afford a real diamond. So the signal can't be mimicked. But it's an outdated tradition. The idea that going to other people's counties and antagonize them is the best way to protect your own country. If you're not 15 minutes early, you're late. Bitch. That adds up to 65 hours a year you should have paid me for. That is 8 full days of work. Water bottles. Cost less than a cent to fill. Also, greeting cards that cost like $5. That if you buy more stuff you will be happy. The fact that the socially acceptable course of one's life is to go to college, get a job, marry, buy a house, give birth to a couple of kids for your family, and then work for 40+ hour weeks ad nauseum. If you deviate from this, you're called lazy, useless, etc. You don't really get to enjoy life like you should, because we're just expected to work until we reach our 60s to 70s. Then retire. But we miss out on a lot of what life has to offer in between all of that. I feel like we'd be less stressed as a whole if we just do things at our pace instead of what's expected of us by society's standards. Identity theft. The bank fails to properly vet someone they gave money to. And now it's your problem. You did nothing. The bank made a mistake. How is that your problem? And look at credit monitoring companies. They claim they can detect fraud on your credit report. Yet, credit monitoring companies and credit reporting companies are one and the same, literally the same company. So the real message is pay us and we will not make false reports about you in our credit reports. We have the ability to detect falsehoods. But we'll only do so if you pay us. There should be a clear case of libel here. The credit reporting companies often report things that they reasonably know to be false. Insurance. Sure, it works as intended. But it could be non-profit, so rates are cheaper and rebates are given. Not so someone can get filthy rich. All the unused money at the end of the year should go back to the insured. Not the insurer less a fair wage. The war on drugs. Cheap informal pharmacopoeia is what's left for anyone who can't afford or access doctors, psychiatric help, or prescription meds. Rehab for the privileged. Prison for the rest. Political talking points. To get us riled up. A gray market with selective enforcement. Like gambling and prostitution. Employment in the informal sector. employment, asset seizure, bribery, and extortion opportunity for cynical enforcers. Prohibition 2.0. Only getting 10 days worth of annual leave per year and then being encouraged not to use it. Edit. I'm Irish working in Dublin who gets 22 days leave a year, excluding public holidays which add an additional 9 days to the count. Healthcare. All the way. All those heartfelt stories on people who raised 100,000 for their neighbor's surgery. And it's great. But no one seems to question why that was necessary in the first place. The person in question has insurance and they're still struggling to pay for this procedure? Even worse if it's life-threatening. People have to make GoFundMes. Petition. All kinds of stuff. To have the basic right to not have to go broke when you see a doctor. Car dealerships. They're literally just middleman functions that do nothing more than raise the cost of the good and produce taxation for the government on multiple levels of the transactions involved in purchasing a car through the third party. Politicians voting amongst themselves on their own salaries and benefits. Pension for life after serving 2 terms while the working class is lucky to retire at 75 and have a livable wage. Yeah. That shit would never happen if the general population had a say. Edit, I meant 2 terms. Not 2 years. My error was pointed out to me so I fixed it. The idea that you need to work endless hours and never have time off. There are plenty of countries where people work reasonable hours. Have 5-week summer vacations and the economies don't fall apart. You are not lazy if you don't eat at your desk or while driving. Politicians talk about the need for health care, but create legislation for health care insurance. Those are not the same things. In fact, the latter actually is a barrier to the former. Tax filing. And #X200B. For the majority of wage earners, the IRS can easily determine how much you owe and tell you what you're owed in a refund. It's simple. That they don't do so is only because tax preparation companies lobby lawmakers to keep the system as it is. Tax preparation companies only exist because they are legally allowed. Middlemen. They are slow, complicated, costly, and the opposite of free market efficiency. Nobody is mentioning the push that college is for everyone. Also, you aren't able to default on your student loans, so banks will give them to anyone. Coincidentally, we started telling people that they should all go to college, no matter their situation, right after passing the bill that made student loans impossible to hide from. Thanks for watching.